In this case, the property is serviced by partial services. However, the preparation of the hydrogeological study in satisfaction with the official plan policies have ensured that the resulting effluent from the additional residential unit can be managed appropriately, and that the land use is therefore appropriate, and thus we can consider the intent of the zoning bylaw met in this case. In considering a minor variance, the four tests of the Planning Act apply. Is the general intent and purpose of the official plan maintained? They have prepared the required study for a additional residential unit on partial services on a lot of their size. And residential development and intensification is encouraged in the village community designation. Is the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw maintained? Yes, the general intent can be considered maintained. The proposed use is not expected to interfere with any adjacent land uses or any existing uses on the property, and has been demonstrated that the effluent from the private sewage services can be managed appropriately, and thus the broader objectives of the zoning bylaw can be considered maintained. Is the variance considered minor? Yes, the variance is considered minor. The request is limited in scope and does not result in adverse impacts on any adjacent properties, nor does it affect the function or character of the surrounding area. The hydrogeological study has indicated no adverse impacts will result from increased septic activity on the property, and that the current septic system is suitable to support the proposed attached additional residential unit. Is the variance desirable for the appropriate development? It is considered desirable. It supports the residential use of the property and the residential intensification policies outlined in the PPS and official plan. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the application should be approved.
Thank you. I would ask you, planner, did we receive any written submissions with respect to this application?
Through the chair, we have not.
Madam Clerk, did we receive anything online today?
No. Sorry, I've received no comments and nobody's online over this application.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the gallery wish to make a comment about this application? Seeing none, Councillor Tabbert, do you have a comment?
Yes, when I first read this, I just read the recommendation, and it says to allow for an attached additional residential unit in the dwelling. So I thought, okay, so there should be an attached building. This is just very minor. So when I went down here and I saw that, and I thought, oh, there's nothing attached. So I went down further, and at the bottom, there's a proposed hay storage on here. If you move that to the bottom, Madam Clerk. See? Yeah, keep going. Right there. And I thought, well, that's not even on their property. And I thought, okay, so this is something wrong. So then when I read the application, it does say inside. So I'm not sure why the wording would be to allow for an attached additional residential unit, because you're not attaching anything. It's already there. So you're not. So that was my only concern is what we are approving and what was read to me were two different things. And I know the hay storage was just a mistake, but yeah, I don't, it's the wording.
Yeah, through the chair. So our definition of, I believe it's an accessory secondary dwelling currently in the zoning bylaw, is a self-contained residential unit with sanitary and kitchen facilities. So what they're proposing is to put a kitchen in the basement, essentially. They have their parents living down there now. There's a bathroom down there. They're proposing to add a kitchen. In our definition of an accessory secondary dwelling in the zoning bylaw, that would qualify, and thus they need to meet the policies. Because it's in the existing structure, it qualifies as an attached rather than a detached, but it's just how our definitions in the zoning bylaw are written, and how the policy currently applies is why this one needed to come forward for a variance, because currently we can't allow a self-contained residential unit in the existing dwelling that's not on full municipal services.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to confirm, you've said it in different ways, the limited service here is water, town water.
Yes, they are on municipal water, but they are on a private septic system.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, if I can interrupt a second, I just got an email from the, well, I guess an email from the owner of the property, I believe, Miss Elliott. I'm just gonna, can we just give her like a minute to see if she's going to actually get on the Zoom link and see if she has anything to add?
Oh, that would
before we
be
make a
very
decision?
appropriate.
Well, I sent her the link, so if we could just give her a minute, so
Right.
if you want to have any more questions, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Well, we'll just pause to see if the applicant is able to get on and wishes to add anything to this application before I call for the vote.
Sorry, Chairman, again. Alternatively, we can maybe just postpone this until after we discuss the TIM application. But I mean, yeah,
Okay.
would that be if up to you?
Would you be okay, Councillor Tabbert, if we postpone the vote, only that, till after the next application is heard?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that'll be part of what you record. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to the third application. And again, I'll read this as a motion. And it has been recommended that the Committee of Adjustment Township Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes and to receive public input pursuant to the Planning Act. Madam, I will move this motion. All right. Planner Baird, could we have the rationale for this recommendation?
So through the chair, so the present applications have been submitted by JP2G Consultants on behalf of the property owners Catherine Tim and Doug Lapointe for the property known as Westmeath Concession B, CLF Part Lots 11 and 12, and RP 49R59. The purpose of these applications is to seek consent to create one new lot, approximately 1.1 hectares in size, with approximately 139.5 meters of frontage on the Ottawa River. The second consent is to establish a new private right-of-way. The proposed retained lands in this consent will be approximately 139.9 hectares in size. The lands have been subject to 16 consents previously, which have been approved. The subject lands contain significant woodlands, wildland fire hazard risk areas, karst topography, and have portions located in the Ottawa River floodplain. We have noted we have received several written correspondence from residents with concerns about the proposed consents. I believe we also have some online with us today looking to speak, as well as the applicants looking to speak. So the provincial planning statement promotes encourages development that is building upon rural character and leveraging rural amenities and assets to support healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas. It also supports the use of rural lands for residential development, including lot creation where site conditions are suitable for the provision of appropriate sewage and water services. Section 4.1 subsection 5 of the PPS does not permit site development on lands identified as significant woodlands in ecoregions 6E and 7E unless it has been demonstrated that there will be no negative impacts on the natural features and their ecological functions. An environmental impact study has been prepared as part of the applications, and the findings of the study demonstrated that no negative impacts are anticipated from the proposed development. Section 5.2, subsection 9 of the provincial planning statement encourages development outside of hazardous forest types for wildland fire. However, development may be permitted in these areas if proper risk mitigation methods are implemented. On the county official plan, the subject property is designated waterfront and rural. The portion of the lands containing the proposed severed lot is entirely within the waterfront designation, which permits and promotes limited residential development. The subject property has been subject to several previous consents and thus is required to fulfill the requirements of section 14.3 subsection 5 of the official plan. This section provides criteria to be considered for any additional consents from an original land holding that has had 5 or more previous consents. The section requires that the applicant satisfy the county of Renfrew and township of Whitewater region that a plan of subdivision is not necessary and that a study be submitted to address the following criteria. The justification of proposed water and sewage disposal services, why a plan of subdivision is not necessary for proper and orderly development of the lands, the need for a hydrogeology study, the need for a lot grading and drainage plan, and the impact of the proposed development on municipal financial resources. A planning justification report to address these criteria was prepared by JP2G Consultants as required under the official plan. So for addressing these criteria, I'll handle them one at a time. So the need for a hydrogeology study. The proposed development meets the size and other criteria listed in the official plan to not require a hydrogeological study under section 2.2, subsection 12F. And as these requirements have all been met, the property can justify using private services and a hydrogeological study can be deemed not necessary for the proposed development. A lot grading and drainage plan has been deemed necessary for the property and will be a condition of approval alongside a professional surveyor going in and assessing the elevation within the floodplain of the lands. The development is not anticipated to have any adverse impacts on the township's financial resources, though a private road agreement may be deemed necessary on the private right-of-way to ensure it's brought up to the private road standard. A plan of subdivision can be considered unnecessary at this time due to the nature of the consent, as there's only one lot. It is an existing vacant lot between 2 developed lots. No adverse impacts on municipal services are anticipated. No new public roads or services are needed to service the proposed lot. And the lot meets the minimum size requirements of the waterfront designation, though we will know if the severance is at some point approved. This will be considered the maximized development potential of the lot, and any future severances on the lot will be subject to a plan of subdivision unless the county of Renfrew or us specify otherwise. But the intent is that this will be considered maximum development potential of the lot. Along the lines of the subdivision criteria, the application was circulated to the required public bodies, including the county of Renfrew, and they have expressed no concerns with the severance going ahead. The proposed water and sewage, so the lot size is appropriate to accommodate the required services as outlined in the county official plan for the waterfront designation. And the well records have indicated that there is adequate water quality and quantity on the property to adequately service the lot. As the required report has been submitted and addresses the requirements laid out in the official plan, the severance can be considered without the requirement for a plan of subdivision. The official plan outlines waterfront development adjacent to a navigable water body, which is defined as within 300 meters, disturbs greater than 1 hectare of land, and or if the lot creation would exceed the 3rd consent permitted, council shall ensure that archaeological and cultural heritage features are protected. As part of this protection, the applicant was required and has completed an archaeological assessment of the property. The study, phase 1 and phase 2 archaeological study were done. Phase 1 is a research on the background of the property to determine if it may contain resources. In this case, the phase 1 determined that it may contain cultural resources. So phase 2 was initiated, which involved an active survey and dig of the site to see if any relevant archaeological resources were recovered. The phase 2 found no archaeological resources on the site and concluded that no further archaeological concerns exist for the property. However, the assessment did lay out several recommendations for the subject property for the future. The intention is that if in future the severance is approved, those recommendations would be included as part of a new or amended development agreement for the property. Portions of the subject land were identified as significant woodlands. Under the official plan, any development on or adjacent to, which is defined as within 120 meters of significant woodlands, must be supported by an environmental impact study. The applicant has undergone the appropriate environmental impact study, and it was determined that the proposed development would be expected to have no adverse impacts on the woodlands as long as the recommendations of the study are implemented. Again, if at some point this application were considered for approval, one of these conditions would be that those recommendations be added to an amended or new development agreement on the subject lands to ensure the EIS recommendations are followed and enforced. The property is in a known karst topography area, section 2.2, subsection 9C of the official plan. No set development should be encouraged outside of karst areas unless it can be demonstrated that the effects and risks to public safety are minor. The applicant has undertaken a karst study with our chief building official, and he has determined that the lands are safe for development, which fulfills the requirements of the official plan. The property has areas identified as wildland fire hazard risks. The official plan requires that planning applications on these lands undergo a site assessment to determine if they are at high or extreme risk. The required assessment was conducted and determined the lands are at moderate risk, not high or extreme risk, and thus no further action is necessary under the official plan. Although through the development agreement noted previously, some vegetation and or building mitigation measures may be recommended as part of that development agreement. Portions of the subject property and the proposed lot are located in the Ottawa River floodplain. The official plan outlines that no development and or site alteration is permitted in the floodplain. The report from JP2G identifies a conceptual building envelope which could accommodate a dwelling and the required services located entirely outside of the floodplain, which indicates that portions of the proposed severed lands can be considered developable. However, the report does recommend that an Ontario land surveyor be brought in to confirm the exact location of the floodplain on the proposed lot, and that location be mapped accordingly on the lot grading and drainage plan to ensure orderly development. This survey would also be a condition of approval if approval is considered at some point in the future. The Township of Whitewater Region zoning bylaw. The subject property is zoned waterfront vicinity and rural in the township zoning bylaw. The proposed lot is contained entirely within the waterfront vicinity zone. The proposed use, lot size, frontage, and setbacks included within the proposed building envelope all meet the requirements of the waterfront vicinity zoning. Section 3.33F of the zoning bylaw requires that a 30-meter setback be maintained between all buildings and structures and the high water mark of any water bodies. The building envelope drawing, which was attached, indicates that the setback will be maintained. I believe the floodplain is also past the setback, so they wouldn't be able to build within the setback, even if a variance were brought forward. And section 3.26 outlines that no buildings or structures other than boat docking or launching facilities are permitted below the floodway. Again, the proposed building envelope demonstrates that a hypothetical development that would be contained entirely outside of the floodway. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act to adjacent landowners, internal, external agencies, and the placing of the sign on the concerned parcels. Several concerns were brought forth by residents prior to the writing of the report. They have been attached. There have been 2 additional concerns attached since the time of this report's publishing, which have been passed to committee members for the review prior to the meeting. Due to the nature of the concerns and the desire to speak at the meeting on behalf of both the residents and the applicant, planning has opted to recommend that this report be received for information and that this meeting be considered an information gathering meeting, and that so we have time to properly consider the public input, and we have adequate time to process and consider it in our recommendation pursuant to the Planning Act intent. So that at this time, we are recommending that the report just be received for information and that the public input be received for information. And the intention is that unless alterations are made to the application, that we would be bringing this back for the December Committee of Adjustment on December 18th with a recommendation and for decision-making at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, planner. Okay, now I will ask, is there anyone, Madam Clerk, online?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay, thank you. I will, for those people who wish to speak from the gallery or online, because this is a YouTube recording, it is helpful if you state your name before you start to speak, so people watching can keep track of who's who, sort of. So on behalf of the applicant, is there anyone who wishes to speak on this matter? Thank you. Come forward.
I can read the names in order so that they can and I'll tell you their names and you can just they say their names and their address.
Hello, my name's Brian Whitehead. I'm a senior planner with JP2G Consultants. I have extensive experience in planning, land use planning over 40 years, and most of which is in Eastern Ontario, Renfrew County and Whitewater Region. I'm joined today by my clients, Catherine Tim and Doug Lapointe, who are sitting in the gallery. And I'm also joined by Brianna Kenny, who's a biologist with JP2G, but Brianna is cross-trained in planning. She's online. And she prepared the environmental impact study, and she filed the applications, and she did the draft report. I reviewed it. I've been involved in all stages of the planning process for these applications, and as well as dealing with the clients and signing off on the planning report. Brianna will be responding to any questions that relate to her expertise, but she'll also be showing some maps during my presentation and some exhibits that we can refer to while I'm speaking. So before we get into those descriptions, those maps, I'd just like to indicate to the committee. Yes, can you hear me okay?
I don't mean to cut you off, but Julie Butella, you may need to share host privileges so that Brianna can share the maps. Is that
okay?
Sorry about that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Before I get into talking about the maps, I just have a few comments. I just want to point out that there have been, with these applications, there were extensive pre-consultations with township staff. As it turns out, there was over four planners between the CAO, who's a planner, and Mackenzie. There was also Alex P. and Alex Benzie before that. So there was almost a year of pre-consultation involved with these applications. Prior to this, previously, there were 2 consents granted for new lots on the peninsula end of the property that the committee may recall. Those consents were granted with various conditions, but for a number of reasons, the client decided not to implement those conditions, and after a 2-year period, those consents lapsed. So in our discussions with the township, it was made very clear, as it was with your planner today, that whatever came forward would be the final lots by the consent process that they would support. And at that time, it was 2 applications. They would support 2 applications. And at that point, we went through various scenarios of where those applications could be filed. And one of the locations was where the current application is located, that there be 2 lots. There's enough room in this area for 2 lots if you include additional lands on the retain. My recommendation, and for reasons I'll explain later, was that those 2 applications be 1. So rather than proceeding with 2 applications for new lots, the completion of the development potential of the properties and was also mentioned as infilling along an existing right-of-way known as Lachlan Lane between 2 existing waterfront dwellings. So it ticks a lot of boxes in terms of planning rationale in that regard, in terms of completing the development potential of the property and development on an existing private road between 2 existing waterfront dwellings. I'd just like to clarify, okay, let's see now. And through that pre-consultation process, it was determined what studies should be prepared. I'm not going to repeat all that because Mackenzie's done that adequately to explain to the committee what studies were done and in addition to the rationale as to why a hydrogeology study has not been completed, because it isn't required in accordance with the criteria of the official plan because of the lot size being 1.1 hectares and because of the density of septic systems within 400 kilometers of the site is lower than 1 hectare per lot. If you take into consideration all of the retained land and all of the existing development within that circumference area. So maybe just, Brianna, you could pull up the first plan. Thank you. These plans are in our planning report, and this is a plan showing we had a separate plan for the Severn retained land because the whole property is almost 140 hectares, which is over 345 acres in area. And the property has over 2.5 kilometers of shoreline on both the Ottawa River and Hennessy Bay. And that doesn't even include the peninsula lands, which to the right. So it's a huge property. It's a lot of waterfront available. There's lots of room on the retain for future development by way of a plan of subdivision. I've been involved since the beginning of the consents that have been filed by Catherine and Doug. And at the very beginning of this process, we considered how the property could be developed in accordance with the plan of subdivision. And everything we've done in terms of severances is, firstly, the original concept that we presented to council in about 15 years ago that was supported by the council of the day included 12 lots for consent. And it was a different world back then in terms, it was the same policy framework, additional consents when they were first granted. They were interpreted very differently back then than they are now. So everything that they have done has been in accordance with that original concept. Subsequent councils have honored those consents. And we got here today. There's been 12 lots, not the 17 that have been granted to the to Timlin Point that was been suggested. But there have been 12. This would be the 13th lot. And according to staff, that's all they're willing to support. I think that's it for this slide, Brianna. The next slide. The next slide is a more of a neighborhood slide. And you can see the severed lot. It's 1.1 hectares. And all of the other lots are essentially an acre in size. Some of the reasons for the layout of this lot include although it's large enough for 2 lots by area, and a hydrogeology would have been required study to support that. When you look at where the floodplain elevation is located, if you can see the solid line that goes through, the proposed severance has a buildable area which is comparable at least to the existing lot to the west, and some of the other lots that are 1 acre. So there's a building envelope above the floodplain. Although it's narrow and long, we've determined that it will comply not only with the floodplain elevation, but it will also comply with the setback requirements from the right-of-way, as well as the side yard setbacks. For a dwelling and septic, a dwelling of a comparable size to the dwelling on the adjacent property, and sufficient area of land to be compatible with the surrounding land use. You can see the right-of-ways in yellow, and Lachlan Lane extends as the bottom yellow right-of-way, extending along the entire length of the lots on Hennessy Bay. Anybody that has a lot in there with a registered right-of-way has the right to access along the entire length of that right-of-way. This sketch also shows the severance of the second application, which was intended to provide the lot at the end of, I guess it's the Sherman property that would have, by way of agreement with Tim LaPointe, would be granted that right-of-way in exchange for releasing their right-of-way over that portion of Lachlan Lane that would be on the severed lot. But given the comments that have been submitted by the Shermans recently, like since your package has been sent, Catherine and Doug are reconsidering that application, because if there's some concern with Sherman's, we don't want to be in a position where it gets granted and then they don't want to do it and we can't get the lot created. So it's just not making any sense to us if they're, but at this point, but we're not prepared to make a decision today. This is just for information. So I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining it. But if should they formally decide to abandon that application, we'll file a written submission to confirm that after this hearing. And so again, the thinking was that if that right-of-way was abandoned, there'd be no need to use the right-of-way over the lot to be severed. But it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody along Lachlan Lane that has a registered right-of-way along Lachlan Lane that includes the portion along the lot to be severed will still have a right-of-way over that portion of the lot to be severed. It won't affect their rights. It just means that given the location of this lot near the end of the right-of-way, it's unlikely that people will want to use it anyway. Right? So for that reasons, whether this new right-of-way is included or not, it's optional to my client. Okay. Maybe the next lot sketch, Brianna. Yeah, one thing I want to point out on this, you can't really see it on this, but we have access to contour information. It's actually prepared by Hydro for all along the Ottawa River. It's called a LiDAR survey of topographic information. And it's actually fairly accurate topographic information. So and it's fairly light on this sketch, but it does show where the existing traveled road's located, where the existing contours are, and we superimpose where the floodplain is on this. And this provides you with, it's a concept drawing of where a potential building site could be located and a septic system. And it's a typical system. It's not necessarily the location of where a dwelling will be put, but the intent is to demonstrate that the building envelope, which includes bounded by the right-of-way, the setbacks, and the floodplain, is adequate to accommodate a dwelling of comparable size to the adjacent lot. And we were very conscious of that throughout the process because we sort of anticipated the neighbors might not be too happy with this application. So we've given that thought right from the very beginning as well. So again, yeah, so I've covered, so we'll just leave that for now. And I've had an opportunity to review the submissions, the submission from Monahan and Brassard, as well as the 5 or 6 other submissions that have been filed. And the other submissions, all the submissions appear to be in the same typeface, and beyond the comments from Monahan and Brassard, all the other ones are like a form letter from what we can tell that have been signed by other neighbors. All the letters are in the same typeface and format and that kind of thing, and they're all have the same writing style. They're all you can tell that the author has strong English language skills and writes well. The content I'm a little concerned about because, for example, there's what I feel is some exaggeration in some of their comments, particularly on the access. The main concern, one of the main concerns I'm getting from some of the neighbors is the access and maintenance of the existing private roads. So all of the applications that have been granted for Tim and LaPointe have been granted with conditions required by the township regarding the road. What's clear, and now we have some legal comments back and forth, and there's some neighborhood disagreements about maintenance of the road, which is not uncommon on private roads. It happens. In terms of the standard of the road is already constructed to a standard which is acceptable for emergency service delivery. The previous consents would not have been granted had the township not been satisfied of that. I've been down this road many times, and as recently as yesterday, and for the most part, 2 vehicles can pass on that road. And as far as road standards, and I've seen many, it's at a standard which exceeds most private roads that I've been on, with the exception of the roads that are now being approved, new roads approved by the township in accordance with their new standard. So it's not the township's private road standard that's been adopted since those previous lots have been granted. But in this case, the severance is on an existing private road. It's an infill on a road that's already been created as a result of the test of the previous road standard of the municipality, which is emergency service delivery. So our position, of course, is to request the committee grant this severance on the basis of that severance. It would not be appropriate to impose reasonable to impose the new standard on the entire length of Tim Road. It would be like saying no to the consent. But in terms of what's coming through clear to me is the maintenance of the road. And we have a legal opinion that says, from that says it's a little, the road agreement's not clear on how the maintenance is to be addressed. But I'm not sure the intent of the existing agreement is intended to tell how the neighbors of these lots, how they should maintain the road. But other than the fact that, firstly, the township is saying it's not a it's not a municipal road. The municipality is not involved. Don't come to us. So that comes through clear. So there's back and forth that the Tims should be responsible for the road. And what my concern is that when these lots are granted, and I just want to read, these lots were granted under a section of the Planning Act. And if I can just find it. Here we are. Right on the next page. So what happens is when you grant a consent and you require a condition for an agreement, the committee and the municipality as a delegated authority have the authority to require conditions, the same conditions that have the same authority as if it was a plan of subdivision. So if it's a development agreement as a condition of consent, it applies to, it's the same as a subdivision agreement in terms of its enforceability. So there's a provision under the Planning Act that technically says the council, in determining a council or approval authority, in determining whether a provisional consent shall be given, has the same powers as the authority as under section 5125, and that's subdivision, with respect to approval of a subdivision and subsections. So under agreements of the subdivision requirements, a municipality or approval authority or both may enter into agreements imposed as a condition to the approval of a plan of subdivision, and agreements may be registered against the land to which it applies. See, the agreements are applied to the lots to be created, not the retained lands. The lots to be created, and the municipality or the approval authority, which is both in this case, as the case may be, is entitled to enforce the provisions against the owner and subject to the Registry Act and Land Titles Act and any subsequent owners of land. So when that land gets transferred, the responsibility of the terms and conditions of the agreement go to the property owners, the subsequent property owners. The owner is, this lot gets granted, Tim LaPointes are the owners. When they sell it, they're not the owners anymore. It's the next person is the owner. And the terms of the agreements run with the title of the land. They own, the Tim LaPointe owned the right-of-way of Lockley Lane and all the other right-of-ways, but they're not, that's the retained land. So when it comes down to it, every property owner that has these agreements, they're all responsible for everybody's responsible for the road, and they have to work together. They shouldn't be coming to this committee and council asking them to solve their problems if they got a problem. That's my opinion. Number of severances, I think I've covered that. That's been covered by your planner. There's no ceiling on the number of severances that can be granted from a holding, according to the official plan. Tim's, although they've had their share, as the committee may know, they have a way to go to break the record. They have a ways to go to beat the record for the number of severances that have been granted from a holding, if you know what I mean. In terms of the floodplain, there's allegations, and it's true that the owner has made some alterations of the land below the floodplain. The township staff asked them not to do it. They did it. I asked them not to do it. They did it. And I tell all my clients not to touch the land before they file the application. Every single client, I say, don't touch the land. But if they do, it just brings unwanted attention. And that's what's happened here. I've been out to the site yesterday. I took some pictures. I have them. I'm not going to show them now unless you want to see them. But there were alterations made, and the shoreline was washboard, wavy, because of the historical push, probably over centuries. There were areas in between in the gully parts that form soils, weedy, mucky. They were excavated, withdrawn, it was graded over, and there's been about a foot of material put on top. It's not 100 loads of fill, as has been suggested. That's a gross exaggeration of what's gone on in there. And regardless, as has been mentioned, in anticipation of this issue becoming an issue, we recommended that there be a grading plan as a condition, or a lot grading and drainage plan as a condition of severance approval. Our engineers can compare the LiDAR information I talked about with topographic information. When the survey gets done for the lot, we'll instruct the surveyors to do a topographic survey of the floodplain, confirm where the floodplain is, and do a contour plan. We can compare the contour plans. We can get a sense of just how much fill has been put in the floodplain. And we can do cut and fill or implement measures to ensure that there's no adverse cumulative effect on the floodplain. That's the concern with floodplains, is if you can, there's a floodway, you can alter the floodway, but if you go below the floodway, then you're adding fill, then you're displacing lands within the floodplain that could adversely affect adjacent properties. That's the issue. So we can make adjustments for that as a condition of consent. There have been concerns expressed about the retained lands in terms of fire hazard and forestry. I can tell there is a forestry plan on the property. Catherine manages it and she's meticulous about it, but it's none of their business. It's not part of this application. So I suggested to the committee that it's not within the purview of their review of this application for severance. And other comments related to fiber optics, and imagine a concern about fiber optics. It'd be a nice spot to have high-speed internet, but at any rate, I don't want to get into that. I don't think that that's necessarily a criteria that you need to look at in terms of the planning merits of this application. And I think there were some comments about Tim Road too that I think are not really relevant to this application. At any rate, based on my experience and what I heard from the township planner today for the lot to be severed, it ticks the boxes on all the official plan and provincial policy requirements, the studies that are required for mitigation in terms of the environmental impact study. This application complies, and it can be considered good planning. So I can support it, and I hope the committee does too. That's all I have to say. Yes. And
You'll remain in case there are questions?
yeah, and at the end, if there's comments made that I'd like to respond to, I'd like that.
That is part of the
Okay.
procedure.
If it's okay, I wouldn't mind getting a glass of water.
Oh.
Sure.
I would just ask Brianna at this time, did you want to make a comment or just remain available for questions? On mute, please.
Sorry, thank you. I'm just available for questions, and if there's anything I can help answer, I'm here to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Is there anyone from the gallery that anyone else from the gallery would like to make a comment? Hearing none, anyone online that now would like to make a comment, please identify yourself.
Actually, if we can, because we have a few people, Chair, maybe if we have Mr. Dupuy online, maybe we can start with him since he's first on the list.
Okay, Mr. Dupuy, could you please unmute and make yourself available for, and make the comments you wish to make?
Of course. First, before I begin, can you all hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Oh.
Pretty good.
No? You can? Hello, it's not clear to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay, good. Perfect. Great. So, good morning, everyone. So my name is Jeff Dupuy, and I'm here today to formally object to these applications for consent. You already have my detailed written submission, but today I want to speak to you as a resident, as someone who lives every day with the consequences of unregulated development in our subdivision. So my wife Katie and I, we bought our land from the owners, Doug and Kathy, in 2019, and we built our dream home. We moved here full-time in 2021, leaving Ottawa behind because we love the peacefulness of this community, the forest and the water and the well-kept homes, and the sense of stability that it offered. It was where we wanted to build our future. But almost immediately after we moved here, that sense of stability changed. Development from the lapsed 2021 severances was ongoing. Trees were cut aggressively, debris was left behind, roads were widened without notice, new projects started before old ones finished, and the landscape and the atmosphere of our neighborhood shifted dramatically. At that time, I didn't oppose the severances, not because I agreed with them, but because I was afraid to speak up. But I'm speaking up today because what we've seen over the past several years isn't occasional disruption. It's an escalating pattern of development happening first and asking permission and consent later. It's roads pushed through without oversight. It's land cleared without consultation, neighbor consultation, and major site work undertaken with no planning approval prior to consents. These incremental severances have effectively created a subdivision piece by piece, which is a practice that we know is improper under the Planning Act. This isn't about one application. It's a years-long pattern that has eroded the character, the safety, and the predictability of our community. Now, a major part of the problem has been the constant overlapping development. Heavy equipment arrives with no notice. Chainsaws, backhoes, and dump trucks operate wherever the owner chooses, early, late, weekends, holidays, frequently right at the edge of people's properties. And multiple areas are cleared simultaneously and left in various states of completion. So what was once a peaceful neighborhood now feels like a rotating construction site. Much of the private road network has been selectively logged or cleared, leaving logs and brush piles, debris, and stumps all over the place. It's not only unsightly, it's potentially a fire hazard for a subdivision that only has one way in and out. But one of the most destabilizing moments was the road rerouting. In 2021, Doug announced he would realign a 300-meter section of road for personal reasons, saying that he would complete the work and gravel it. But by May 2024, just 3 years later, that commitment shifted. He announced the road would be completed, but not graveled, and the old section would be blocked. And when residents raised concerns that we didn't want or need a new road, certainly not one that was inferior, and that we shouldn't be forced onto it, the response was essentially that they own the road, we have no choice, and that he has no obligation to meet any type of road standard. Furthermore, the maintenance of it would then fall to us. Now, this caused panic. Our snow contractor refused to plow the new section, meaning residents risked losing winter access. And only after significant pressure did Doug agree to leave the old road open for one more winter and gravel the new one. But instead of collaborating, Doug's lawyer sent a letter to the street asserting legal positions about road responsibilities that are simply not supported by law. And so This highlighted a major governance gap and underscores exactly why a formal road maintenance agreement is needed between the owners and the residents. One that clearly sets out the responsibilities and the standards and decision-making about the area. All of this has happened without oversight, approvals, or accountability, and that brings me to the current severance. This is not a routine application. The lot has already been cleared. It's already accessed by a new road that is slated for severance. And it has been altered by unauthorized fill in a floodplain, as mentioned earlier, making this application premature and potentially impossible to approve. Also, it's important to note that the Ministry of Natural Resources is involved. There is an active complaint with documented evidence, and the township is aware. So there could be significant remediation required on the land. And so until this is resolved, the application should be denied. I mean, how can we seriously consider approving a severance on land under investigation and potentially unusable as proposed? And not to mention, approving this would set a dangerous precedent, signaling that an owner in this township can develop first and seek permission later, that piecemeal severances can be used to sidestep the Planning Act, that unauthorized work in a floodplain can be overlooked, and that residents have no meaningful protection when an owner destabilizes the subdivision in which they live. So for these reasons, I'm asking the committee to send a clear, firm message from an owner's perspective that enough is enough. No more incremental severances. No more unapproved development. Now, while my written submission on November 12th previously left room for consent with strict conditions, after a closer review, I now recommend that the committee treat the application as fundamentally non-compliant under the Planning Act. I also urge the committee to require remediation of disturbed areas, to halt further unauthorized work, and to ensure the owners negotiate a legally binding agreement with the lot owners so that our subdivision can finally have some clarity and safety and stability. And lastly, I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking that the laws and the standards and the policies that are already in place be applied fairly so that the people who live here are protected and so that proper planning, not piecemeal development, guides the future of our township. Thank you for your time and for hearing my perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Dupuy, for your comments. Madam Clerk, who's next in line?
Mr. Monahan?
Okay, Mr. Monahan, if you could unmute and please make your comments.
Sure. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, sure. My wife and I, Rain Broussard, and myself, live at 378 Lachlan Lane. And we, as with the previous speaker, we bought the lot from Doug and Kathy around 2012 and built a home there. So what I'd like to do is just address a few key points. So we did submit some attachments to our objection. A couple of them were legal letters, and I just want to address those first. So there was a letter that's entitled the Point and Tim Legal Letter of November 24. And then there's a document called TS Letter of Objection. So these letters surround what Mr. Dupuy mentioned earlier was this situation with the change in the road in the fall of 24. And I think Mr. Dupuy explained the situation. The road was changed. There was no real consultation with any of the lot owners, but they decided to reroute the road, and it became an issue with the snow clearing company that was clearing the snow. The important thing about this is in the Tierney Stauffer letter, which we asked for, it states the issue around who actually carries the responsibility of the road maintenance. And I know Mr. Whitehead talked about this, and our lawyer has sort of outlined this fairly clearly in his letter. But in speaking with the mayor a couple of weeks ago, he said, you know, there are 40 or 50 private roads in the township. And these are problematic for the very reason of road maintenance. And to Mr. Whitehead's comment, we agree with, and I believe it's a provincial jurisdiction that states that anyone who has a right of way has an obligation to pay their share of the maintenance, which we have all agreed to when we bought the lot. And each of the lot owners have a road agreement with the owners, Catherine, Tim, and Doug Lapointe. And I've included, I believe, one of those lot owner agreements. And it states just that. We agree to pay a pro rata share of the road maintenance. Some of these agreements say that the road owners, Catherine and Doug, will provide an annual bill and will pay a pro rata share. The problem is in their letter, the Lapointe and Tim legal letter of November of 24, their lawyer clearly states that they now have no responsibility to maintain the road. The difference with this private road is that, unlike many of the other private roads, they signed an agreement with the municipality in 2015, which also is included later on in that attachment with their legal letter. And it clearly states that they have an obligation to maintain the road to minimum standards of emergency access. So this has become an issue, not just because of what happened in the fall of 24, but also this application is suggesting that there would be an additional area or a part of the road that would, their expectation was we would maintain that. So since there's no agreement with the road owners of who is responsible for carrying out the maintenance of the road, any changes to the road are problematic. So what the recommendation from the lawyer was that regardless of any severance applications, there should be an agreement negotiated between the road owners and the lot owners as to who's responsible for maintenance, because the group of lot owners who are paying and arranging maintenance currently have no ability to collect fees from the other lot owners if people choose not to pay. And they currently have no agreement with the road owners in terms of having a say on what they choose to do if they choose to reroute the road. So this leaves a large gap in the whole issue of the ongoing maintenance of the road and access. This could lead to the municipality having to instigate an action against the road owners to uphold the original agreement from 2015. So that's my point. I appreciate Mr. Whitehead's view on it, but we have hired a lawyer to review this, and this is what their conclusion is. The second point really is about the floodplain, and as I think Mackenzie had read in the planning outline, it includes that portions of the subject property in the proposed lot are located in the Ottawa River floodplain, and section 2.2 of the official plan outlines that no development and or site alteration is permitted. So obviously Mr. Whitehead and the owners admit that they have done work in the floodplain. The suggestion that there's been 100 truckloads of fill is including the lot in question, which is the proposed severance, and also the floodplain to the east of that section, where they have dumped, we estimate, between 6 and 8 feet high of fill over a large area of the floodplain, which continues. In fact, we have photos from last weekend of the dump truck and the piles of fill that they continue to place in this area. So it's not just the lot in question, it's also that other area. As Mr. Dupuis mentioned, there was a complaint filed with the township, and they did come and take some photos. I think Alex was the person who did that. And they were asked to stop. They have continued. They continue to put dump and fill into these areas, and it's not permitted. So the problem is, as Mr. Dupuis said, the applicants have started to work on these lots since 2021. Now, the important thing is that there was an application in 2021, which Mr. Whitehead referred to. And in 2021, the township recorded the fact that this would be the 17th and 18th severance off of Lachlan Lane. This is what the record shows. And that they had 16 severances parceled out prior to that. This obviously exceeds the plan of consent applications. And I can hear Mr. Whitehead referring to the fact that they haven't set the record. And I asked him to clarify what his why he would make that comment. Is the goal to set a record for consent applications? Frankly, if it is, I find it insulting to the residents to be joking about setting a record for consent applications, given the situation. Mr. Whitehead also refers to the fact that his company has been involved in this development for the past 15 years. And it's all been planned, and the plan hasn't changed. Well, why would they be proposing to close a section of the road if they had developed a plan 15 years ago that they're now just fulfilling right now? It seems a bit odd that they would have planned to change a road for additional severances later. So I would argue this doesn't fit within the plan. This has been part of an ad hoc development. And each time that they've been granted severances, it's been along the same suggestion that these would be the end. And unfortunately, in 2021, this was again the case. And I would quote from the meeting at that time, which said, lastly, these two lots will complete the development potential on the concerned parcel by consent approval. It also went on to say that these two consent applications can be considered infill development, and as discussed with the owner, will close out the development potential of the concerned parcel via consent applications. This was what was passed and voted on at the Committee of Adjustment meeting in the fall of 21. We would take this to mean that any future applications for further development would require an application for subdivision. And this isn't the case here. So why would the planning department and the municipality entertain this severance when in 21 it was agreed, voted on, and recorded that there would be no further consent development allowed? This potential severance they're proposing is not part of 17 and 18, which were granted to them. It's a different area. And the problem is the owners and the applicants are currently clearing the additional lots that they were granted as 17 and 18, which have lapsed. And they're clearing those lots, filling them in, and preparing them for the next application. And this is not acceptable. So, in conclusion, the lot owners have an issue with the road owners not concluding an agreement on who's responsible for the maintenance of the road. Regardless of this application, we'd like the township to enforce the ability to have a negotiated agreement to clarify this situation. Number two, even though you could argue one more lot could also provide for more lot owners to carry out part of the costs, there are several lot owners who are not paying at this point in time. And there's no assurances that further lot owners would pay. And as the road committee and lot owners, we have no legal ability to collect. Only the owners of the road do, and they refuse to do that. Number three, I'd like to make the point that these applicants have been allowed ad hoc severances over the years and now have been allowed 16 severances, 16 parcels, lots that have been granted piecemeal over the course of the last 15 years. This does not follow any official plan or any section of the official plan. There should have been a subdivision requested and a plan developed years ago. The argument for granting these additional severances seems to be that they're going to be the last applications entertained. We know time and time again that hasn't been the case. The notion that one more severance will make no difference doesn't solve the problem of the lack of planning all the way along. As has been noted, the applicants are currently developing the 2 lots they applied for in 21. They will no doubt be back at this committee shortly, along, I'm sure, with Mr. Whitehead, to request these severances again. The committee members have an obligation to the residents and the people who voted for them to address these issues and put an end to ad hoc poor planning. And I think they should carefully consider the points raised here. I understand this is now going to be shifted to the December 18 committee meeting. And I'd like to just say that we also just received all the details around this application 24 hours ago. We requested this last week if we could see the application, and the clerk said we were not allowed to see it because it was private. We also asked if we could see any of the studies, and yesterday they told us that we could see them by coming to the township office, but we would not be able to take any pictures of them. And we'd have to come during regular hours. This doesn't follow any of the provincial guidelines. This application and the details in the studies should be made available for us. We haven't had time to properly review them in making our comments, and we'd like to see those well before the next meeting. So these are my comments. We would respectfully request this application be denied. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I thank the committee for the time.
Thank you, Mark. And I must say that you're coming over here very clearly. I can hear you very clearly. And so we don't need to ask you to, fortunately, to repeat it all again. And thank you for being available for questions. I'll ask the clerk, who's next in line to speak?
I believe we have no one else online.
Okay, no one else online. All right. So at this point, I ask the applicant if they would like to respond. Please.
Just a couple of things, if I may, in reply. For clarification, there was a road relocation referenced. And the reason for that relocation was that the existing road was not within the surveyed limits of the right of way. So Catherine and Doug wanted to relocate the road so that it would be within the surveyed limits within the actual right of way. And they were thinking of not just today, but when they're no longer here and their sons own the property, that they wanted it to be tidied up. So I understand. So that's all I really want to say about that. The other piece is, and it's of course it's the existing road, like it's Lachlan Lane, right, where the right of way is granted. So the whole issue of the maintenance of the road, my feeling, and I think a maintenance agreement amongst the existing property owners is a great idea. I don't think the municipality should be a party to that. You don't really want to be drawn into a private road agreement. I think they need to work it out amongst themselves. They can come up with agreement, but just like the way people don't pay, you'll always get one or two that don't pay their fees. You're not going to get everybody to sign it. And I don't think that there's anything the municipality can do to require people to sign it. I think it's a matter that is between the people that are out there. In terms of the number of lots per holding, I have been involved since the beginning. I was not involved in the two severances on the peninsula, but in consultation with staff, those severances lapsed, but they did honor that there could be two more lots to complete the development of the holdings. So we went through a process with staff. You may recall at the beginning, we went through a lot of scenarios on what would constitute the completion of development, and this infilling piece was one lot and not two. So the township staff were at that time were prepared to consider two applications. We're coming forward with one for one new lot. So that's all the only clarifications I want to make. But again, I think it's a pretty good road. I think the people out there, if they can, it's a nice area. And what this lot is being proposed is not going to adversely affect the overall character of that area. And that's the only matter that's before the committee, subject to what they decide on that other right of way, which I think may not survive. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Tabbert, do you have any questions that you would like to ask at this time?
I have many questions, and I don't know if I can ask them because we're gathering public information. So the questions I have, they pertain to the project, but I'm not sure if they're under the Planning Act. So with a little bit of leeway, I'd like to ask the question, and if it's not appropriate, let me know. Okay, so I did look over many of these documents that were sent to me.
Just if I may interrupt, do you have anyone you would like to direct? Make sure who you're directing the question to.
Okay, the first one will be to our planner. Okay, on Schedule A to Bylaw 1505793, signed April 27th, 2013, the mayor and CAO did not sign that agreement. But they signed a different agreement on May 1st, 2013 for Bylaw 1304606. So I'm having trouble aligning all the bylaws together. So what I'm looking at is what's happened in the past and what's happening now, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate. That's what I'm not sure about.
I can do some further review into that for sure to see what was previously done. My understanding of the development agreement that was signed and registered as it pertains to the road is this, I assume this is partially in reference to that development agreement? or is it?
I honestly can't remember which it is, and I didn't bring my laptop, so I don't even
Okay.
have the information here. I can send it to you so you'll know for sure.
Yeah, if you can send it to me, I'll review with Ivan, who was planner at the time, and get some more insight into that. And that's, I think that's part of the value of this being an information session today, is to gather all these comments and information. And we can, we'll look more into that, for consideration at the next meeting.
Okay, this question, the next one is to Mr. Whitehead. Is there an open complaint with the M&R? And I guess this goes to my planner as well, because the M&R would have been circulated with this, I'm assuming, to say whether or not they agree or disagree with it. So, yeah, does the M&R, is there an open complaint with the M&R? And does the M&R, has the M&R commented on this?
We have no information that the MNR has a concern. The Tims have advised me that they have not been made aware of any concerns from the MNR. And in regards to circulation, I'll defer to Mackenzie, but I don't believe MNR would have been circulated as part of this application. But I'll leave that to Mackenzie to answer.
The MNR, I'd have to re-review the Planning Act. I'm not sure if they're a required circulation body for Committee of Adjustment applications. However, I don't know if Julie has the answer to whether they were circulated or not, because she sends out that that acknowledgement to public bodies. To the MNR or just to our circulation? Okay. So it would be sent to our circulation list, which would be under the whoever's listed under the Planning Act. In my previous experience, I don't think the MNR is required under the Planning Act. However, we could look at doing a recirculation to the MNR in this case when this is coming back. Similarly, we were not aware of an MNR complaint, or I wasn't when preparing the report. This information has come up now, and it's something we will be definitely digging into for consideration before the next meeting.
Okay, so further to that, maybe I have the wrong ministry, but would we not inform a ministry if the floodplain is involved in a severance?
I would have to re-review the Planning Act and our policy, and we'd have to check the email itself to see which public bodies it was provided to. But yeah, I'll have to re-review who's required to get the circulation. I believe we've met the criteria for who's required to get it, but we can definitely look at expanding that to the MNR on a recirculation if that's desired in this case, which it seems like it is.
Thank you. Now I was down to the road the other day. What's today? Thursday. So Tuesday I was down the road and I knew about the Sherman house at the far end there. And when I passed Mr. Monahan's house, 378, it was just, there was no road. So I thought it was a driveway to Mr. Sherman's. But is it part of the road? Because it was like just a two tire tracks. So I'm not sure who to direct this question to about the Sherman property, if they've had the access through that, or if that's their driveway, or just where I was.
Can you help us, Mr. Whitehead?
Sure. The driveway the road you're referring to is on the right of way. And the portion of it that will be with this lot to be severed will be part of the site, the development agreement and the lock rating and drainage plan, and the access can be all considered as part of that process. So any upgrades to that portion of the road, it can be dealt with as part of the development plan.
So
It's part of the road.
it's part of the road. So why does this, I'm sorry, why does this, because this would be the road, right? why is this part of this if that's a road going through already? I'm not sure
This
I
part of this.
understand. Like when I was driving, okay,
Yeah,
I drove past there and I could get right to Mr. Sherman's property.
that's their access, yes.
Okay, so you're contemplating putting this into one lot. So right now, how many, oh, it's going to be severed, okay. So then you are looking to have Mr. and Mrs. Sherman go all the way around, is that,
That was the original proposal, yes.
okay? And were they part of this conversation that they would be losing their access and have to go all the way around?
Yes,
Okay, so they were okay with that?
they were. We're not sure now.
According to the letter, they're not.
Yeah.
But they were in favor of it when this was,
Wouldn't have filed it without consulting them.
pardon?
We wouldn't have filed it without, if our client hadn't been consulting with them.
Okay,
So for whatever reason, they've decided differently.
okay. Thank you. Okay, so I think this next one is for our planner. And I know I always get this mixed up. I'm very bad at this, but it says 16 consents, but I thought we were only allowed 3 on one property and then it had to be something else. And why would there be no subdivision agreement here? That's 16. I mean, we were going to approve 18 lots apparently. So, and on the same discussion as the lot. So the other 2 lots that were consented to and council and the agreement was that there would be no further consents since now we approved it, right? Okay, but the owners did not finish it. They decided to let it lapse. So does that say that those severances did not ever happen then? And that's why we can grant this on top, so we're not taking back our word?
Through the chair. So essentially, yes, well, the severances were approved with their conditions because they have lapsed. Those severances basically never existed, essentially, because they were never completed. So no, like the 2 lots don't exist there. There's nothing there. I believe previous discussion and granted, this is secondhand because I wasn't present for this discussion, was that the 2 severances were going to lapse and then the township planning was going to look at honoring the intent. 2 lots were allowed if they want to resubmit for a change. Basically, this was applied like it was an amendment to that application, and it wasn't. But that was kind of the treatment of it, is that in the honor of those lots 17 and 18 were granted. I believe the consideration was that because those have lapsed, we would consider another 2 lots based off what Brian said, and I believe what Ivan said, and they brought forth 1, and we are considering this one the honoring of those 2 previous consents, and that would be it. If these are considered for approval, there's still a decision to be made here, so approval's not been granted, nor is it guaranteed to be granted, but I believe that was the thinking when these applications were brought back.
Further to that, then, they were granted 2 approvals and they lapsed. And so now they have 1 approval coming, but it could be 2 lots, but they're only asking for 1. Could there be another application then of another consent because we did consent to 2 previous?
So we're not, the consideration of this severance is honoring the spirit of that, but it's not an obligation to fulfill those. I believe, well, in the township's view, in my view from this is honoring those 2 previous approvals, and this is all that would be considered under that. If they bring back a consent for another lot, we'd be pushing for a plan of subdivision at that time. This is the one that we are considering in lieu of those 2 lapsing. We're not under any obligation to re-grant them 2 consents just because they had 2 previous ones that lapsed. We were doing it in the spirit of working with the applicant and bringing forth development to the town. But we would consider this, if it is to be approved, the honoring of that kind of previous two consents that lapsed, and we wouldn't be looking to consider another one under that spirit of that agreement.
I guess to the planner again. And I really honestly cannot remember. I did read it, but the township has signed a document saying that the maintenance has to be, no, the road has to be constructed so that emergency vehicles can get through. And I can't remember, and see, this is where the reading comes in. Does it say does the road has to be maintained so that emergency vehicles can get through as well? Or just constructed for them to get through?
I would have to double check. From what I'm remembering, it was constructed. However, I don't have it in front of me, and unfortunately, my laptop doesn't seem to like to work on Wi-Fi when it's not connected to the actual network physically. So I don't. That's usually why I don't have it at these meetings. Mr. Monahan's correspondence, I believe, included that section. If we are able to pull it up on the report just to confirm. But because I don't want to give.
That's probably right there. Maybe I'm not sure if it's the yellow.
Schedule, here we go. I think it's bad.
There you go, the top.
Slope stability, I think a little more, lot grading. The one above that, perfect. Maintained. Yeah. Yep.
If an emergency vehicle can access it, then the property owner should be able to access it without them taking on maintenance. Unless they have an agreement that says they do the maintenance. Now I know I'm interpreting it, so I mean, and this is just information gathering, so you'll have to look into it as well, what I'm reading into it.
I mean, it says maintained, however, I'm not a lawyer nor a legal expert, so I don't want to be providing my opinion on what that necessarily means for the property. I think that's a legal interpretation, so I don't want to speak to that and then have my comments on the record that should be legal comments trying to interpret this. I believe Mr. Monahan has his hand up. I don't know if he had something to add on that.
Yeah, it just a couple of just comments that it is the lawyer who examined this said it has to be it's not just constructed, but it should be maintained to emergency vehicle access.
Well, it does say that there too.
The other thing I just wanted to mention is the Shermans have indicated they weren't consulted, and in the spring, Tim,
you shouldn't be able to talk now. You shouldn't be able to go on any further.
The Tims.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
The road unauthorized, and were asked to remove it by the Shermans.
Yeah, we shouldn't talk too much about what they said because they're not here to either agree or to contest it. So take it as information.
Well, Mr. Whitehead said they were consulted, and he didn't have confirmation of that. So I'm just commenting on that the same way. I have an email from them saying they weren't consulted.
So, and I appreciate that's why we allowed it, but I don't think we should further discuss it until we get confirmation ourselves. Planner, I mean. Okay. That was appropriate, though. Okay.
And I have one final one that I can remember here. And so am I to understand that you did admit that even after the township asked you not to put fill in, you continued to put fill in? And I guess this is to Mr. Whitehead because the applicants have chosen not to speak. Is that correct? That even after you were asked not to do that, you continued to put fill in on a floodplain in our municipality?
Some property owners, and not even in addition to Mr. Lapointe, feel that if it's their land, they can do what they want. Now, there are other property owners out there that alter their shorelines as well. So it's within that philosophical perspective that the work was done, that he's the property owner, whether there's a severance or not, it's their land and they can do things to their land. Which is why I always recommend that they don't touch their land during the process of a planning application, because it brings this type of unwanted attention. So, but we're offering a mechanism to correct it through a condition of consent. Okay.
I don't know if anyone has watched these meetings before, but I am strictly adherent to what we do on our property with regards to floodplains.
Right.
They are there for a reason, and we didn't put the floodplains in. A ministry did. And that's why I believe a ministry should be written or should be asked to comment on this. Building into a floodplain, anyway, that's a personal opinion, I think. But yeah, so I'm going to... I think that's all I have, but if not, I can always talk to my planner or yourself later. Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead, I have a question. I'm last. A lot of the questions have been very good in helping us understand this whole application and the regulations and whatnot. But I would like you just to, because one glaring question is all of these severances. And so I'd like you to, because you briefly referred to it, but I'd like you to go into a little more detail about how this all started and how really it, if I interpreted your comments, how really they're only asking for one more than what was previously granted many years ago with a different interpretation of the Planning Act and so on. Could you give us that as part of how it will help us make a decision in the future?
Oh, well. Yeah, there's some history there. The additional consent criteria were established, roughly 20 to 25 years ago. And when they were first established, it was a welcomed change. The prevailing political, if I can say, philosophy was that more flexibility on consents than there is today, which is a lot more restrictive, particularly, and a lot of it's with the interpretation of the policies. So the way the policies are structured are you can get 3 lots. If you got 100 acres, 3 lots are pretty straightforward, easy to get. You do the 3, you build on them. There's additional consent criteria for 2 more. Okay, so that was never enforced before. There was there was criteria, and one of the criteria was that the first 3 had to be built on. But what the county would say is if the local municipality supported the applications, then they would waive the interpretation of that clause and allow the additional 2. That's since changed in the last 3 or 4 years, where the county planners, Charles retired, and there's a new manager and there's a different interpretation now. They're interpreting that rigidly. So once the 5 lots have been created, there's what's referred to as the additional consent criteria. And then when the criteria were first established, they were, it was policies, the policy read to the satisfaction of the local municipality. It wasn't to the satisfaction. Think of it as the county. This is when the county policy that the county was providing a service, and they still do, for consents for lower tier municipalities. So it was interpreted that the additional consent criteria, that if the municipality was in agreement with additional consents, then the county would accept that. In around 2021, 22, the county went through their big review, and now they have delegated authority for amending the county plan without having the province approve it, which is fine. And the policy's been amended to say it's the township and the county approval, which is why it's important that we got county comments on this application, because now that we have a fifth planner saying we're agreeing that this consent, when they're not opposing to it. But prior to that, it was there's no ceiling on the number of applications that could be filed. So as a planner, I had a client wanted 10 lots in Horton Township, and we got them under that original policy. 10 lots at one time. I had 16 lots on Bark Lake. I've got, over time. But that was under the interpretation of that previous policy regime. And at the time, I can say politically, it was, severances were considered as the in a more flexible way, in a way that was supported politically. But over time, the interpretation changes, the planners change, the interpretation changes, and the current thinking now is more restrictive on how the application of those additional consent criteria are applied. And, when I say it, Tim's have, and I apologize if I'm being a bit flippant, but there is about breaking the record, but that wasn't my intent. But there are other ways that have been used, and twice, with two clients, I've been able to get more lots with an amendment to the county official plan. And I don't even want to go there because it's not a fun trip. But in this case, if you look at the layout of the land, the existing severances, the reason we've switched to this location, because it is indeed an infill situation. Like, it's between two existing lots. If you look at the I don't know if you're there. Are you there, Brianna? If you pull up the neighborhood plan.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, you can see how it fits into the neighborhood. So it's easier to justify as completing the development of the property. So right there. See, so if you look at the row at the top and the row at the bottom, now it's complete. And the proposed severance is infilling between two existing lots. And it's the only infilling situation on the North Shore and the South Shore. So we're done. And maintaining the peninsula is, if and when a subdivision's ever filed for the retained land, it would be further back. Well, then we'll hear from the neighbors. But it's a complicated piece of property, that peninsula. It's when you're talking about trespassing, it's a constant problem. It's a constant headache. It's probably one of the most popular spots on this section of the Ottawa River, for people swimming and camping. People camp there. It's a constant headache. And yeah, like, people use the Tim property. They walk over it. They use it. So, but in this case, we can support it as infilling. I'm hoping your planner will support it. And all the indications that I have is that they can, the county can support it. I mean, yeah, that's sort of the context and history of how these policies have been interpreted over the years. And, but there, at the end of the day, there is no ceiling, like top number. But if it makes planning sense and it can be supported and it complies with the official plan and the provincial policy statement, which we're saying this does, and other planning reviewers are saying it does, it should be supported. It doesn't mean we can't file another application. That's true. But what staff is telling us is that they will not support it in front of this committee. And that, so that would be a strong indication for me to recommend to my client that it's probably not a good idea to file that application because it won't be supported. So does that answer your question?
It does. I just wanted further clarification on, you did mention it in your first presentation, but I wanted that section to be clarified a bit more. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
I have a personal opinion about development on private roads. I think in general, not this case in particular, in general, even the road that our Mayor Neil Nicholson lives on, private road development is not the best kind of development. And there can be instances where, which I don't think is proper, where the municipality can be drawn into disputes between taxpayers. And that's a civil issue. That's not us. And so I'm from this meeting, I'm thinking that we're going to be getting some, it has been mentioned, some legal advice. And I think it was a very good meeting because more information has come out today that maybe the council members didn't know. And that's going to help us in the end with our decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't. Thank you.
I think Mr. Dupuis has his hand raised.
I'm okay. Jeff, did you want to make another comment?
Am I permitted to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I suppose I do have a comment. I just kind of want to hone in on this, trying to understand this excessive severances and specifically, like, my understanding of the Planning Act is anything after 5 consents, the bar is set high. The bar is set high to allow for those to occur. So suppose my question is, can planning staff point to the specific evidence demonstrating that a plan of subdivision is not necessary here? It seems like the comments are made and they're conclusory, they're descriptive, but I've not heard any concrete planning evidence to support that.
Fair enough. Are you prepared, Planner McKenzie, to answer that, or would you like to have time to consider the Planning Act to reply?
I'll review the specific provisions of the Planning Act. Generally, it's quite vague, so I don't think it'll set out specific criteria of why a subdivision isn't needed. The planner has addressed, or the applicants have addressed that within a planning justification report as required by the official plan. And in reviewing policies, I found that justification valid. However, if more consideration wants to be given to on that, then I can certainly expand upon that in a future report. In terms of the official plan and policy, while they do discourage consents above 5, I'm not aware of anything that explicitly says they cannot go through with consents above 5. we can do some further digging and expand more on why a subdivision is not justified. The justification provided is alongside my own review, alongside the county providing no concerns on that end. In this case, I considered enough for the report, but if that's an area that needs to be expanded upon, I will expand upon it. Yeah, I think that's all I have at this time. And I think providing specific evidence of why a subdivision is not necessary is the same as providing specific evidence of why a plan of subdivision is necessary, and that proving a negative can be quite difficult definitively, and planning is subject to interpretation from planners. However, that is something I will emphasize and focus on and elaborate more on in a report when this consent comes back.
Jeff, is that helpful?
I mean, yes and no. I think if I'm reading here, it says a plan of subdivision can be considered unnecessary at this time due to the nature of the consent as only one lot. So I feel like the document that was just circulated yesterday kind of underplays the fact that this is part of a bigger picture. This isn't just one lot. This is part of an entire subdivision. So I would be curious to see what tests were met to only consider this as a one lot and with very little impacts. So curious to hear more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so to be clear, that's something that you will address in the recommendation when it comes forward.
I can certainly expand upon it.
Yes.
As noted in the report, it wasn't just because it's one lot, it's because it was only one lot in this case, and because no adverse impacts were anticipated based off the proposed development of said lot, that no new public roads were needed, that no adverse impact on municipal services were anticipated, and that the lot meets the minimum lot size requirements of the waterfront designation, and that we would consider this, as per the previous consensus we've spoken about, maximize development. Those were the reasons given in the report. I'm happy to elaborate on those reasons, but the reasoning was not, it's one lot. And the report also is pertaining to the creation of this lot. So the report is framed around the one lot. Yes, there is consideration to the other things, but the reason we referred to that in our subdivision and why a subdivision is unnecessary is because the application before us is the creation of this lot. That's all I wanted to say, but that is something I will expand upon and provide more detail on in a report coming back in the future, because that desire has been expressed.
Thank you. Thank you, Planner. Okay, finally, any other comments before we take the vote?
There's a vote on the recommendation to receive the information. That is a motion that needs to be passed. That's what the vote's for.
Yes. So with that, then, all those in favor of the motion? It is unanimous. And thank you, Planner, and thanks for the people who contributed today. Okay, so now we need to finish the agenda. Is she online?
Yeah.
For 4 Low Court, I believe.
Allow for
Yeah. Low Court.
So we're on, but I don't know, maybe we can.
Okay. The applicant, Miss Elliott, would you like to speak to this application? If you do, you would need to unmute.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Okay?
Yeah, just really briefly, first I would like to apologize for this morning. I'm not sure what was going on trying to get on the call, and I thank you for allowing me the time to speak now. I'm pushing it back a little bit. The reason I feel it relevant to talk is if anybody is at all confused as much as I am with this minor variance, I would just like the opportunity to kind of clear up why it is important for us. So at Forlow Court, this is our first home that we've ever purchased as a family, and we took possession of it on June 2nd of this year. We knew living in a small town and community is exactly what our family of four needed, and Beachburg was the community that checked all of those boxes for us. My in-laws sold their home in Proton Station, Ontario, and moved their entire lives here to be in the Valley, to be close to my husband and myself for support as they are entering their elder years of life. Making a choice of multi-generational living took zero thought, as this is how I personally grew up in my childhood and into my young adult years. This home was a perfect home, offering a very spacious main level floor for our family of four, while also providing a beautiful space for my in-laws to live comfortably, minus a kitchen, which is the reason for this minor variance. Adding this kitchen is our last step to help foster an environment in our home of independence for the last years that my in-laws will be here. The purpose of this renovation is not to increase value of our home and not to create a space for rental income. The sole purpose is to create increase the value of our lives as a family, to continue the path of multi-generational living for our home, that will have a positive impact on the lives of our family. This has been quite a process for us. It's taking a huge mental toll on my mother-in-law, being 6 months without a kitchen, and a mental toll on us having to try to provide nice hot meals for them has been really, really stressful. So the minor variance really is our last step for the contractors to get in and get that kitchen started for them. We're hoping before Christmas, but I mean, if there's at all like any questions or clarity that anyone's looking for on behalf of the homeowners of Forlow Court, I mean, my husband Brandon is now online here. I'm more than happy to speak on behalf of the owners as well, but I feel like it's probably pretty straightforward at this point.
Yes, and thanks very much for your comments. It's interesting for us to know the background with these for these applications, and we're happy that you provided it. We when we left this item on this agenda item, we were ready to vote, but we thought since you wanted to speak, that it would be appropriate and we have the time and we want to listen to you. So we did. And now that you're with us, I'd ask Councillor Tabbert if you have any questions.
I do have a question, and it's for our planner. It's something Mrs. Elliott said. While this isn't a rental unit for her family, once this is done, can it become a rental unit for the next purchaser of this home?
Theoretically, yes, which is why we want to make sure we're going through the planning process to have it as an approved additional residential unit because it fits that definition. It could be. That is an option that the homeowner will have if they want to rent a portion of their home out. So that's why we're going through this process, because if we opt to make an exception in one case and then it gets sold to someone else starts using it one way, and all of a sudden that's not approved within our zoning bylaw. So even though I know there was questions about it earlier and the variance might seem a bit overzealous, that's kind of the primary drivers. When they're adding in that kitchen, we're qualifying as an additional residential unit. So we want to make sure that it is a properly regulated and permitted additional residential unit just in case down the line. And it's not questioning the integrity of the applicants or anything like that, but if they sell the house, someone else could use it for that purpose or something like that. So we just want to make sure everything is to the town standard.
If I can add a comment
Thank
on that,
you.
it's okay.
Go ahead.
And I agree with what you're saying in respect to it. In future, it could be a rental. In order for it to be an adequate rental property, it would actually require more additional renovation because it is not completely segregated from the top and the bottom floor. You would have to completely take the stairs out that go into the basement and put an entire wall and floor in order for it to be considered a complete two dwellings. Because at this rate, if I rented this out to a stranger, they could literally walk up the stairs into my home and have access to all my personal belongings. So although, yes, it would have a kitchen and its own separate access through the garage, they are completely open to each other.
Yes, Planner Mackenzie.
And sorry, I should note that the consideration of it being used as a rental is purely the planning policy perspective. It doesn't speak to building requirements and things like that. Our consideration is just the planning perspective, which is why that language was used. But I can respect that as it stands, there would need some renovations and building work to bring it up to code for a rental.
So from a planning perspective, the criteria are being met.
Yes, from a planning perspective, it qualifies as an additional residential unit. Assuming this variance would be approved, it would qualify as an additional residential unit.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Tappert?
Nothing. Thank you.
Then we are at this point ready for the vote. All those in favor of this recommendation? It is again, Madam Clerk, unanimous. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Now, we're going to postpone the confirmation of minutes.
Through you, Chair, if what we could do is approve the October, I'm sorry, I forgot the date, October 16th minutes, but postpone the September 25th minutes until the next Committee of Adjustment meeting.
Is that okay? So we're going to approve the October 16 minutes. Yep.
Can I can read you a new motion, so we'll amend this motion.
Okay.
Committee of Adjustment approve the October 16th, 2025 minutes and postpone the September 25th, 2025 minutes until the next Committee of Adjustment meeting.
Okay. Would you move that amendment, Councillor Tabbert?
I move it.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? It is carried unanimously. And I declare this meeting adjourned at 12:16. Thank you.